We are officially live. Thank you so much, Joaquin Flores, for joining us. Thank you, everyone who has joined this session. We are on the workshop, Understanding the Customer Journey Using Data to Drive Value, an amazing session on this fifth session of the day. Thank you, everyone who has joined us once again. Joaquin is the VP of Growth at KAVAK.com. He will tell us more about that. Joaquin, thank you so much for joining us, and the stage is yours.
Thanks, Eddie, for the quick intro, and thank you to all that are joining me today on this quick chat we'll have around the customer journey. I would like to dive in. I mean, I created this presentation, sort of making it a little fun, a little trivia here and there. If you have any questions, feel free to write it down in the QA section. We'll go over them at the end of the presentation. The main idea of the presentation is how and why we need to move our mindset from a performance to a growth mindset. And that's basically what I have been doing in the past 6 years. I started doing hardcore performance marketing in e-commerce, which is all driven by ROI. And when I moved to KAVAK.com, this was a big question that we had within the company, within the marketing team, is how we move past ROIs and think more about growth. And this is one of the main quotes that I have in mind when I think about growth. Performance is always based on, okay, we have this amount of money, we will look towards this ROI, and we need to hit the targets. Growth is how we can build a model that is self-sustainable and can liberate energy all throughout the process, right? So in terms of building a marketing team or scaling up a company, we need to think about this methods to create these loops that will help us grow, create more value to users, create more engagement with users, and starting growing or not only lower funnel metrics such as sales or acquisition costs, but rather start thinking on how the user perceives their product and what's the sort of value that they're obtaining from this. So it's basically moving from a gas mentality to an electric car mentality. And I put this example because KAVAK.com specializes in selling cars. So we feel a lot of comfortability thinking about how we can move the user through our customer journey and create more value and try to seize any opportunity that we have with them. So to start this quick presentation, I would like to set up a framework, which I know you guys, mostly of you are fairly comfortable with the customer journey methodology. I chose this customer journey map, but there's tons on the internet. If you see the search terms for customer journey in the past 2 years, it's grown like 4 times. It's something that everybody in marketing or growth has in their mind, even in product. And the fact is that even if it's a little bit simple and maybe it doesn't cover the whole things around the growth model or the whole things around a user, it provides us with simplicity. On the one hand, we can structure together different setting stones that we can look at. We can provide focus on those specific parts of where the user is at. And we can specify goals or KPIs, and that's basically one of the uses that we have for a customer journey. I know this is mostly known for everyone, but it's good to take sometimes a look at the basics to understand how we can grow from them, right? So the first question in trivia, and this is something that I would like everyone, if they have thoughts, what is the best way of obtaining users? So first part is, let's imagine that we're in charge of user acquisition and we want to drive users to install our app. What would be the best channel strategy for obtaining large volume of users without spending a lot of money? I'll start the poll and you guys can choose the best answer that suits for you or the one that you think it provides the best acquisition methods. So I'll give you a couple of seconds just to dive into the poll. For me, this is always tricky, right? When you enter a company and in the growth department, that's like the question that you have. Everyone asks you, okay, so should we start campaigns in this channel? Should we start doing something here, something there? And one of our goals as growth is taking out the pieces, understanding why would one perform better than the other, and start doing testing, start doing analysis just to see which one gets the best mix with your product. I will stop the polling over here. Just close it down and get a sense. Basically, what I see is most of you guys are right and wrong at the same time. This is what I love about growth. There's no one single answer, and I saw that some of you guys put down none, or some put all, some put Facebook, and I understand the mindset that goes behind it, right? We think about the channels that have helped us in the past, and through those channels, we think, okay, I got a very healthy CPI in Facebook, so let's invest a lot of in Facebook. And we use a lot of our background learnings to enforce a channel strategy. But one thing that always happens is we think that because it's helped us in the past, it's going to help us in the future. That's one of the big mistakes that we can go on the journey of becoming a growth company. And it's not because it's wrong or right. It's because there's not a single answer for this. That's not the way to actually write down the question, but rather think of it the other way around. Think of it three basic pillars that will define if one channel strategy is better than the other. And this, for me, are three insights that I got from the guys from Reforge, which is the basic framework: the what, the why, and the who. But that tells us what, for a start, what are we asking the user to do for us? What's the call to action that we're enforcing the user? In this case, it was app install. So we're looking for a user to download our app. And that's one thing. And we think about, okay, app installs, it's a call to action. You can do a PLA ad, you can do a universal app campaign, and that's only a click away. Okay, that's one thing. But the second thing is why? Why would the user do this? And this has to do not only with the value proposition, but rather the motivation that the user has for making that a specific action. And I want to be perfectly clear on actions, not only the value proposition from our company, but rather the action itself. And it has to do a lot about how difficult or how motivated is the user to perform that action. Even if we have a complete value proposition, it's different to ask a user to install our app from purchasing a product, from purchasing a product within the app. And that's why the customer journey is so basic but important in the sense of structuring the whole dynamic of the user. At the end, we want the user to purchase something from us, but the action itself is downloading the app. And sometimes we get those mixed. We don't see the motivation behind the action itself, and we focus on the end result. And the last thing that is very important to us is who is the user. The user that is performing, or that we want to perform this action, who has this specific motivation, who is this user? Is this user things very simple as the demographics of the user, but thinking more about the sense behind it? What sort of user is it? Is it a user that wants to browse? Is it a user that wants to look into the different offerings that we have? Is it a user that's already looking for our value proposition? And that varies a lot and impacts the why and the what. That's why the idea is, if we blend this in sort of a Venn diagram, the perfect hit spot of our content channel strategy should be the point where these three things intertwine and where we can see the content and channel driving this action. And now, this was just a basic example, and I wanted to do it focusing on app install because there's always different combinations, even in this example. This example is the same action, and I'm using an example from KAVAK. So the action that we want the user to perform is buying a car. The user itself is a car seeker. But if we get those mixed and see that they are the same type of user, we will never look at the motivation that's behind this. And this is why I wanted to make clear how we can have different combinations. And different combinations may impact the content strategy that we deploy. For example, if we look at the last slide of the presentation, we can see we have an action that is buying a car. We have a user that is a car seeker. And we know that the motivation behind of the user is that they need a car. They've probably been looking for cars. They've probably been asking prices for cars. And we know that a good content strategy here would be a PLA or product listing ad from Google. Why? Because the user knows that they need a car. The user is looking for a car and they want to buy a car. So we present with the product itself on a very UX-friendly interface, then it's more likely that the user is going to perform the action that we want. But if we look at the right side of this, and we know it's the same user, it's a car seeker, it's the same action, but the motivation is different. They want to learn about cars. Maybe they're not as deep within the customer journey of actually knowing that they're going to buy a car. Maybe they're more on the browsing part of it. They want to learn which cars are better, how to compare one car with the other, what type of versions are there in the market, brand, model. It's a different motivation. So here's where we have to see, okay, the motivation aligns with the action. So if a user wants to learn about cars, is it aligned with the action that we want the user to perform, buying a car, or is it not? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. By thinking about this, I'm going to throw a second trivia. Thinking about the user that wants to learn about cars. And this is an example that we actually deployed in KAVAK. We wanted to see what sort of listing would perform better with this type of user. We already knew that the product listing app, so the carousel feature in Facebook, worked a lot with the user that was looking or in need of a car. But we wanted to see if the same premise held up for the user that was just looking for cars or looking to know about cars. So the question is the next. Of these two parts of content channel strategy, which one had the best CTR? On the left side, and I'm going to start the poll here. On the left side, we have a blog post. The blog post talks about how to drive an automatic car for the first time. It's indexed by Google. You can look at it in the search bar if you want to, if you write down specific keywords that align with the whole SEO structure behind it. And on the right side, we have a product listing ad. The product listing ad, it has a very strong discount proposal. It has a lot of proposal in terms of commissions, zero commission. You can see the discounted price. It's very on point with all of the pricing metrics that we know users love. Users love to know about prices and whatever. Now, the thing here is, think about the user's motivation. The action that we're measuring is click, and the motivation of the user is to learn more about cars. This is like the trick behind when you think about content channel strategy. What's the motivation? Why would I, as a user, click on this ad if I want to learn more about cars? Okay, so I'll close the poll right now. I see we have basically 57% blog posts, 43% PLA ads, so basically 50-50. It's not clear which one would perform better. Okay. So let's see what happened. Basically, the blog post got 3 times better CTR than PLA ad. So that's a good insight. I mean, 3 times, if you do an A/B test of anything and you get 3 times the result that you're expecting on one thing, it's clear that that's the way to move, right? So that created in us a question, which was, okay, so we're getting more clicks if we put blog posts. So should we invest all our money? Should we move all the paid media spend that we have allocated, all budget towards hiring people to create content? And then the second question comes, right? Which is, okay, if we wanted clicks, yes, but our end result or the action that we wanted from the user was buying a car. So is it gonna flow the same way if we invest everything in content strategy, in index, in search? Is it gonna bring those car purchases? Is it? So for this, I'm basically painting a simplified picture of what the blog post user see customer journey looks like. So if I want to search, I want to learn about cars, I'll probably search it on Google, read a specific article, and if I have any questions, comment or question about the specific article, probably on a chat or maybe to a friend. The question that we had is, after this happens, will the user buy a car? And how can we make it or move it towards buying a car? So if you see the whole structure change, on the one, before we had a user that's called a car seeker. They were looking for cars. And now, as they enter our property, enter the blog, they become a blog user. They have different attributes, they have different metrics, they're browsing through our content, but the motivation behind remains. They still want to learn about cars. Now, the question here was, is buying cars something that we can target? So what we did was, okay, we see that we're getting a big volume of users, organic users of no cost. They're interacting with our blog post. Okay, how can we check if they will buy a car? And we did 2 things. We looked at the database and saw, okay, from the number of users that clicked our blog post, how many users added the vehicles to a wish list, or how many users created a lead asking for more information about cars, or asking for prices, asking for financing, whatever. We saw that the volume was low, but we were still thinking, but this is the best way to create users, to bring users to our site. So we spent a lot of money in the target. What happened? Terrible conversion rates, high CPAs, low purchases. It was a flop. It was something that everybody looked at me and said, okay, this is not working out. So what came to mind was, okay, we're forcing a user to do a different action than the one that we were expecting similar results. We weren't looking clearly at the motivation. We were looking clearly at how it aligned with the action itself. And that begged a lot of questions behind it. One of the questions was, how can we figure out where we went wrong? How can we know if why were the users not driving purchases? And we have a lot of hypotheses. Was it the content? Did our content not impact the user as we expected? Was our product? Did we get the wrong type of user? Was the car seeker not the user itself? Was the motivation not learn about cars? So this is a question open to anyone, and I start the poll. What sort of information or what should we do to figure out where we went wrong? And we have a lot of things that we can deploy on an app or on a website. We have surveys, we have ratings, we can play with analytics behind the site. We can use Google Analytics. We can use Hotjar to check on-page analytics. We can check heat maps. We can see average time per session. We can see different paths that the user did. If they went to a blog post afterwards, what they did. This, I think it was the less tricky question of them all. At the end, and I'm seeing a lot of answers around the different subjects. I'm going to close this real quick so we can have a couple of minutes for QA. The guys that put all, I think for me that was our strategy, but sometimes it's not the case. Sometimes you're limited on the amounts of information that you can pull in. Sometimes you don't have ratings enabled. Sometimes you can't get customer feedback at a conversion rate that you wanted. Even if you send an NPS, you can have low responses. So basically here, for me, it's always about whatever we have, whatever we can analyze, let's do it. And my team focuses a lot on, okay, we have a lot of metrics around user interaction. We have a lot of metrics from all of the acquisition channels. We have a lot of metrics of user funnels, user interactions. We use everything. We use everything to check what happens, not just before the user enters our site, but afterwards. What's the sort of things that the user does? And we came up with these 3 interesting insights. One, the user, after searching, reading, and asking, they read more articles. They browsed around the blog. They looked at different types of articles, from things about cars to things about markets. They even went into view item pages of cars and looked at the cars, checked the specs, checked the prices. They exited, but later returned. And we had a very good retention and recurring user base for this. So we had an epiphany. The blog post users just wanted to learn more about cars. Go figure. And it was driven from the very beginning. We knew that they wanted to learn about cars. So why were we forcing them to buy a car? So we saw that the action that was more aligned with their motivation was to read and to engage. The next question that came to mind is there a way to leverage the engagement and recurrence? Is there a way to generate sales from these recurrent users in a different way? And what we did is, we let them engage. And this for me is a very, very strong concept. Whenever possible, let engaged users an outlet so that they can interact with your content publicly. What we did is we distributed the same blog post, but through our social media. We embedded with a cool creative everything that we had in our blog post, because we knew that the content was strong enough to create recurrence in our users. And this was an eye-opening for everyone. We increased reach in Facebook by 3 times through sharing, through commenting. We increased 2 times traffic from Facebook posts to our site, and we increased the conversions attributed to Facebook organic at 50%. Because we saw that even if these direct users weren't looking for buying a car, they would engage in a way that they would bring in more users with higher probabilities of needing a car. Okay, to sum up, as we have a couple of minutes left, I will leave you with this 5 points. 1 point is, the conclusion is, it's not only about customer journey. We should not only focus about that specifically, but rather think about growth based and not performance driven. Think about the users and how they want to interact, what the actions they want to do with you, what sort of motivation they have. But don't leave out the customer journey, as it still is a powerful framework. It's still useful to simplify, to maintain focus, to establish goals. The next thing is we always need to map actual user motivation. And that combination will not be stable throughout our customer journey. So we always need to look back and think if we're doing the right combination. And for that combination, use data to give insight and think about what drives the user to perform the action. With that, you can think of alternatives, and data gives you alternatives, but it's also about understanding as a user, what would you rather do where your motivations, where the type of user and where the actions that you as a company want to drive from the users get aligned. And through that, we can break the customer journey. We can increase interaction. We can get better CPAs. We can get better CPIs. But everything comes down to thinking more as a user and less as a company.
Excellent, and thank you so much, Joaquin, for sharing that insight. Thinking more like the user. I think that's a great way to put it. It put us into a world of more empathy, definitely. There are a few questions in there. Joaquin, I don't know how you'd like to do this, but I can get started with Valeria Saavedra, who is asking, how do you incorporate this into the lifetime value analysis and setting KPIs to grow strategies?
Okay. Yeah. That's a good question. I mean, at the end, everything that you see in an LTV or in a KPI can be broken down to specific parts of the journey. There's a lot of frameworks that I could guide you through in terms of how to model it. But at the end, what you're thinking is, if you map a customer journey, and this is why I think this is a powerful tool. At the end, it's simplistic, but it helps you to go through it. If you map the customer journey and you know that these users, for example, in the case of blog posts, you know that these users generate a lot of traffic. That traffic is good for one, your audience list, and you can do retargeting, but as we've seen, it's not the best strategy. But these users generate a lot of reach. And through reach, if you think about social media reach, you can map down what's the sort of conversion rate that you have from social media to your site in terms of CTR. Through the CTR, you can align an overall CR of what the sort of volume of users purchase from it. And from that, you can map the number of conversions of the ticket price or the value. So you can get a pretty good sense of what's the sort of metrics that you need or should be seeing in each part of the customer journey to get a strong LTV or get a good ROI.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We have, of course, 2 more minutes left, so the system will cut us off very quickly. There is a question, but I'm not sure we'll have enough time to go through it. It talks about what roles does the app plays in Cava's customer journey. If you could do it in less than a minute, that'd be amazing.
Okay, perfect. We have 2 separate apps in KAVAK. One app focuses on the first part of the customer journey, which is the part of looking through the catalog, learning about the sort of prices, specifications of each car, and you can even book. We have this, the business model of KAVAK is you can book your car for a video call where we show you the car, or you can book it for what we call a reserve, where we can take the car to your house. So that's the part map from that specific app. But we also have a separate app that focuses on the last part of the journey. Once you already bought the car, this is a post-sale app that focuses on everything that has to do with maintenance of the car. So we keep the user engaged from beginning to end. If a user buys a car with KAVAK, they have a guarantee. We offer a 3-month guarantee without price and extended guarantee of 15 months. So a user can plan the maintenance. We have notifications to tell the user, okay, your car needs this. Everything's connected to a device that's connected to the car, so we can tell the user your battery is running low. You need to go to the service to check your tires, etc. So it fulfills like the complete customer journey.
Excellent. Joaquin, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to go over all these insights with all of us. I don't know if you have some parting words for us before we leave.
Yeah, thanks a lot to everyone. Thanks a lot for you guys to getting me into this call. If you have any other question or want to chat offline, there's my email address. You can send me a note. I answer fairly quickly. So everything you need, I'm here to learn.